My parents didn't come to my wedding. They said it was because I got married before my perfect sister. 8 months later, their flawless little family image is finally starting to crack. And honestly, I can't even pretend I don't feel a strange mix of pain and vindication. I'm 32, and I've been with my husband for 4 years. When we finally tied the knot, everyone showed up. Everyone except my parents and my sister Molin. Their absence shocked a lot of people, but not me. Disappointed, yes. Surprised? Not really. Given the history between us, maybe I should have seen it coming. Let me explain. Growing up, I learned early on where I stood in the family hierarchy. My parents never exactly hid their favoritism. Molin was the golden child, the kind of person who seemed born to shine under a spotlight. Every room she entered, eyes turned. Every challenge, she conquered. Spelling bees, science fairs, talent shows, you name it, she won it. By high school, she'd collected the full set. Class president, valedictorian, prom queen. Tall, slim, effortlessly graceful. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine before she ever tried to be in one, and she did try. While I was buried in computer labs earning my degree in computer science, Molin was modeling between classes and earning her business degree. I remember her first real modeling gig vividly. My parents threw a grand celebration as if she'd just won an Oscar. Her first professional headshot, her perfect smile immortalized, still hangs above the fireplace at our family home, framed like a sacred relic. That same year I graduated from college. My parents' reaction? A brief, distracted, well done, before they went back to planning Molin's next photo shoot. After college, her success snowballed. Corner office, company car, and a senior executive title at 30. Meanwhile, I worked as a mid-level software developer at a respectable firm. Steady, good pay, fulfilling enough, but not something that made my parents' eyes light up at family dinners. On top of it all, I didn't look like her. I was shorter, curvier. My mother, who worshipped thinness like a religion, constantly reminded me that I wasn't trying hard enough. She dragged me to fitness classes I never asked for, shoved me onto endless diets, and compared me to Molin as if she were the universal standard for womanhood. Molin never struggles with her weight, she'd say, as if it were my personal moral failing. Those comments cut deep, even when I learned to pretend they didn't. For years, I chased their approval, signing up for activities they chose, following their plans, even trying modeling once just to prove I could. It was humiliating. I failed miserably, and Molin never let me forget it. At some point in my mid-20s, I stopped running after their validation. I decided to build a life that made sense to me. My own career, my own circle, my own peace. And strangely enough, life became lighter once I accepted that I would never be their favorite. Still, I kept a polite distance. At holiday dinners and family gatherings, I'd smile, nod, and let them gush over Molin's latest success, boyfriend, or vacation. They were too focused on her to notice how detached I'd become. Then one day at a tech conference, I met the man who would eventually become my husband. He saw me, really saw me, in a way no one in my family ever had. He loved my sharp humor, my love for coding, and yes, even my body, the same one my mother had spent years criticizing. He never once tried to change me or measure me against anyone else. 4 years later, he proposed in the most ordinary, perfect way. Takeout, our favorite show in the background, laughter spilling between us. I said yes without a second thought. When I told my parents, I expected at least a flicker of happiness. Instead, there was silence. My mother finally asked if I was sure and gently suggested that I work on my figure before the wedding. My father barely said a word. At the engagement party, their distance became impossible to ignore. They spent most of the evening whispering over my mother's phone. My husband later told me he overheard fragments of a call. My sister crying on the other end. My parents murmuring, "This wasn't the plan." We never thought Rebecca would get married first. Planning the wedding was supposed to be joyful, but every step reminded me that my parents weren't on my side. My mother had entire Pinterest boards for Molin's future wedding, but showed zero interest in mine. When I found a simple, elegant A-line gown that made me feel beautiful, she only said, "Well, at least it's practical for your body type." Thankfully, my future mother-in-law stepped in. She treated me like the daughter she never had, helping me with dresses, decor, and details. My husband and I checked the guest list multiple times, sent paper and digital invites, tracked every RSVP. I know for a fact my parents received theirs. I even saw the red receipts. Still, they didn't respond. My calls went unanswered. My texts got brushed off with vague excuses about busy schedules. So I stopped begging for their attention and focused on the people who truly wanted to be there. My in-laws were wonderful. My husband's sister hosted a beautiful bridal shower where nobody dared to mention my family's absence. The wedding itself was magical, an intimate morning ceremony followed by a relaxed garden reception. Everyone said we looked radiant, deeply in love. And yet, there were moments where their absence hit me like a punch. The empty front row seats, the missing father-daughter dance, the space in my chest that should have been filled by family pride. After the honeymoon, I reached out one last time, wanting closure. Their response? They were deeply hurt because, according to them, they never got a formal invitation. When I finally got my parents on the phone, my mother wasted no time turning the conversation into a tirade. She accused me of being careless, of deliberately excluding them from the wedding planning. She said she had always dreamed of helping her daughters plan their weddings and couldn't understand why I'd leave them out of such a milestone event. I remember sitting there stunned, listening to her rewrite reality in real time. I reminded her that we'd sent both physical and digital invitations. Check the records again, right there during the call. Both had been received, both confirmed. Still, I didn't confront her for trying to gaslight me. Instead, I simply apologized for the mix-up, said goodbye, and hung up. Later that night, my husband gently pointed out what I'd been refusing to see. He recalled how my parents had looked more shocked than happy when we'd announced our engagement, how they'd made excuse after excuse not to help with the wedding. He hadn't said anything before, wanting to spare me more stress. But looking back, the pattern was obvious. The truth was simple and brutal. The idea that their less impressive daughter, me, was getting married before their golden child was too much for them to bear. That realization shattered something inside me, though in a strange way, it also freed me. My wedding day, which should have been about love and new beginnings, had become another battlefield in my parents' lifelong war to protect their perfect family image, with Mullen gleaming at the center of it all. Recently, I learned that Mullen is now engaged to someone she's been dating for barely a year. I don't hear much directly anymore, but word travels through the family group chats I'm no longer part of. My parents are ecstatic, bragging about high-end venues, designer gowns, private fittings, all the mother-daughter bonding moments I was never offered. But here's the twist. Many relatives have quietly decided not to attend her wedding or engagement party. Apparently, my parents' behavior at my wedding became a topic of conversation in the family. When people ask me what really happened, I tell them the truth, plain and unembellished. I say my parents couldn't stand to see me marry before their favorite daughter. That's all. I don't try to twist it, and I don't ask for sympathy. A few days ago, my parents called again, furious. They accused me of trying to sabotage Mullen's wedding, saying that relatives were declining invitations because of rumors I'd spread. My cousin, who'd listened to Mullen vent, told me what was really happening. People weren't avoiding the event because of gossip. They just didn't want to celebrate with people who could be so cruel to their own child. Still, my parents insisted I was spreading lies out of jealousy. But I'm not lying. I'm just telling the truth. Maybe instead of blaming me for the fallout, they should reflect on their own behavior. If the truth makes them look bad, maybe that says more about them than it does about me. The more time passes, the harder it is to pretend I have parents worth holding on to. Their absence at my wedding isn't what hurts most anymore. It's the realization that I never really had the loving, supportive parents I always wished for. I'm learning to let go of the illusion. I'm focusing on building a life with someone who truly values me. Still, I promised myself I'd give closure one last try. 2 weeks later, I decided to face them in person. After all your kind encouragement, I felt strong enough to confront what I'd been avoiding. I wanted to talk, not to fight, but to finally be honest. It didn't take long for them to turn defensive. My mother started by claiming I'd ruined their family reputation. My father accused me of being jealous and vindictive. I did something I'd never done before, I agreed with them, though not the way they expected. You're right, I said quietly. I am jealous. But not of her career, or her looks, or her achievements. I'm jealous of the unconditional love and support you've given her. Love you never even tried to give me. The silence on the line was heavy. Then my mother began her usual denial, saying I was exaggerating, that they'd treated us equally. Something in me cracked open. Years of swallowed pain came rushing out. I reminded them of every moment I'd been made to feel invisible. Every birthday overshadowed by one of Mullen's accomplishments. The time my high school graduation dinner was canceled because she had a modeling callback. How her prom dress cost more than my college textbooks for an entire year. I told them how humiliating it was to watch them plan her imaginary wedding for years, while showing no interest in my real one. I described the ache of standing at my wedding, seeing 2 empty front row seats, and realizing my mother-in-law had been the one to help me choose my dress, arrange the flowers, hold my hand through it all. Instead of listening, they attacked. Why didn't you ever say something? My father snapped, as if I hadn't tried to talk to them 1,000 times before. My mother accused me of being spiteful for telling the truth to other relatives, and then she said the words that finally made everything clear. We never thought you'd go so far as to ruin Mullen's wedding out of jealousy. But we always knew you were insecure about her success. That's not how we raised you. It hit me then. They weren't listening. They never would. Even in this conversation, me begging to be heard, they only cared about Mullen and how this might affect her big day. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I didn't apologize or soften my words. I said, you're right about one thing. You did raise me. You raised me to believe I'd never be enough, that Mullen's accomplishments would always matter more, that keeping up appearances was more important than my happiness. But you also taught me something you never meant to, that I deserve better than this. There was a long silence. Then my father spoke, his tone cold and rehearsed. Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're terrible parents, since you've already decided we are. You clearly enjoy seeing us suffer, and my mother delivered the final blow. You've always wanted to be the center of attention, Rebecca. Maybe this is just your way of getting it. Don't blame us for you choosing to play the victim. I didn't argue with them. What was the point? Everything I'd said had just been proven true by their own words. They couldn't take responsibility for anything, not even at the end. So I simply said goodbye and hung up. The relief that followed caught me off guard. I cried, yes, but they weren't the panicked, broken sobs I used to know. These were tears of release, years of weight rolling off my shoulders. For the first time, I had said everything I needed to say, without censoring myself, without guilt, without trying to protect their feelings. Later that evening, I stood on our back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. My husband joined me quietly and slipped his hand into mine. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then I asked softly, "They're never going to change, are they?" He gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "No," he said, "but you have. And that's what matters." He was right. I've changed. The desperate girl who spent her life chasing approval no longer exists. I don't need their validation anymore. Not to feel whole, not to feel worthy. Admitting that my parents will never be the people I needed them to be still hurts. But it doesn't destroy me the way it once did. Because this time, I've stopped hoping. I don't care about my sister's wedding or the family gossip swirling around it. Let them have their glittering event, their perfect photographs. I've had my say, and now they'll have to live with the consequences of their choices. What surprises me most is the lightness I feel. It's as if I've been carrying a boulder my entire life, and it finally slid off my back. It's not the happy ending I once dreamed of, but maybe it's the one I needed. The freedom to stop fighting for love that should have been freely given. Second update. 3 days after that confrontation, something unexpected happened. My sister decided to get involved. Predictably, her plan backfired spectacularly. Yesterday morning, I received a long, carefully worded message from Mullen. Her tone had the same polished condescension she'd perfected over the years, like a queen bestowing judgment from a throne. "What you said to our parents was completely inappropriate," she began. "They've given us everything, guided us every step of our lives. You can't just call them bad parents because you're insecure about the choices you've made. Then came the signature Mullen twist, a mix of superiority and veiled insults. I understand your wedding wasn't exactly what you envisioned, she wrote, but that doesn't mean you need to ruin mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that reflects the hard work and standards some of us have maintained. Not everything has to be a competition, Rebecca. I didn't reply. I've learned that responding to her only gives her ammunition. Instead, I blocked her number. But Mullen isn't used to being ignored. A few hours later, my husband called me at work, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Apparently, my sister had found his personal number, probably through some mutual contact, and sent him a series of messages. Her opening line was formal enough. As Rebecca's sister and someone who deeply cares about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out. It went downhill fast. She told my husband that, as my partner, it was his responsibility to help me behave more appropriately. She described me as overly sensitive and claimed I didn't understand the bigger picture of family dynamics. Then she urged him to guide me toward reason before I irreparably damaged family relationships. And the best part? She tried to appeal to what she thought was his ambition. Surely you understand, she wrote, that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects, and by extension, yours. My husband, who's a senior software architect with an MBA and zero interest in social climbing, found the entire thing hilarious. She really doesn't know me at all, does she? He said when I got home. We sat together reading her messages, laughing, not bitterly, but freely. Seeing Mullen's old manipulative tactics crumble against someone completely immune to them was unexpectedly healing. That's when it hit me. Despite her success, despite her carefully curated life, Mullen hasn't changed at all. She's still that insecure girl who has to tear others down to feel superior. The difference is that now I can finally see it clearly. Her pattern is as predictable as ever. When direct control fails, she tries to manipulate others, turning them into her allies to isolate me. She did it in high school, whispering to my friends when she couldn't bully me outright. And here she was again, using the same playbook, just with fancier language and a professional email signature. But I'm not that girl anymore. 10 years ago, her words would have gutted me. 5 years ago, they would have left me in tears. Today, they barely touch me. I've grown past her games. My husband's reply was perfection, polite, unshakable, and impossible to twist. Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being, he wrote. As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. It's best if you direct any future concerns to her directly. Have a nice day. That was the end of it, almost. Mullen sent one last message before disappearing back into her world of self-importance. I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when it all blows up in your faces. Ironically, her failed attempt to help only reinforced my peace. Reading her words didn't hurt. It clarified everything. Nothing has changed. Mullen is still the same manipulative person who needs to control the narrative, and my parents are still eager to believe whatever version flatters their image. But for the first time in my life, their dysfunction isn't mine to fix. It isn't my burden anymore. Watching her efforts collapse under their own absurdity was oddly satisfying. Proof that the old power she held over me no longer exists. She didn't pull us apart. She brought us closer. Instead of letting Mullen's manipulations wedge a divide between us, my husband and I laughed our way through it. Her frantic texts became our inside joke, and by nightfall, we were planning a quiet weekend getaway, far from all the noise. That's when it hit me. Family isn't about appearances or shared blood. It's about the people who stand beside you, who laugh with you when life tries to test your peace, who don't need to control or manipulate to prove love. I realized that protecting my peace didn't make me cruel. It made me free. I no longer wanted to be drawn into Mullen's endless wedding drama or my parents' desperate attempts to maintain their perfect family image. My husband and I made a pact that night to focus on building a life that's ours. Because true success isn't about showing off. It's about choosing happiness on your own terms, surrounded by people who lift you up rather than tear you down. And by that measure, I've never felt more successful. But peace doesn't come without chaos trying to find its way back. 2 weeks later, after Molin's failed attempt to manipulate my husband, things took another dramatic turn. Apparently, my parents had launched a full-blown campaign to restore their reputation. Through family whispers, I learned they'd been calling relatives one by one, spinning stories about how I'd supposedly excluded them from my wedding just to play the victim. Their newest tale? That I'd sent their invitation to an old email and address, the same ones they've used for decades. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic, but their plan backfired spectacularly. No one believed them. Instead, relatives began recalling their own memories of favoritism, of double standards, of years where Molin could do no wrong. One aunt even mentioned how my mother used to pull similar stunts at family events just to ensure Molin was always the star of the show. This time, though, their manipulation worked against them. Key family members, including those who were supposed to play big roles in Molin's wedding, started pulling out. Their dream venues suddenly became unavailable. Even a family friend who owned a luxury bridal boutique mysteriously ran into scheduling issues. Then came the breaking point. At a recent family gathering, someone innocently asked about my wedding photos. My mother snapped, jealousy flaring like a match in gasoline. She started ranting about how I'd changed, how I was trying to destroy the family. But the outburst exposed her. Relatives who had once believed the perfect family act saw, finally, who she really was. Their reputation, the one they'd spent decades curating, began to crumble in front of everyone. It's almost poetic, really. The harder they try to maintain the illusion, the faster it collapses. Every excuse they make only uncovers more truth. Even my father's brother, who had always stayed neutral to keep the peace, called to apologize. He told me he finally saw how I'd been treated and that he and his family won't attend Molin's wedding. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was doing all the work for me. For years, I thought silence was strength, that keeping the peace was worth my pain. But silence only enabled their behavior. My husband said it best. They built an image of the perfect family, but it was all scaffolding, no foundation. It was bound to collapse, and now it has. Today, I wake up lighter. I don't chase approval. I don't walk on eggshells around my sister's moods or my parents' expectations. For the first time, I feel like I'm living for myself, not for the family narrative they scripted. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living truthfully while their lies unravel on their own. To everyone who stood by me, especially the strangers online who reminded me that family can exist in kindness, not blood, thank you. You've shown me what real support looks like, and maybe that's the truest kind of family there is. If you're watching this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because there are more real-life stories like mine that prove one thing. Sometimes breaking away from the wrong family is the first step to finding the right one.